Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday edition of the Right Wing Populist podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So, this is the first Saturday edition. And I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of how these podcasts will work. Every Saturday, I'll do a new, 10 ish minute segment. And then for the rest of the podcast, it'll be the episodes from the previous week during the week. So that's how it'll work. If you want to get this a day earlier, you can subscribe to the website. It only costs you $1.99, and you'll get the new segment plus the whole week's worth of content a day early instead of having to watch each segment by itself. And like I said, you get this first segment also early. So that's cool. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe. If not, the podcast will drop every Saturday. So I just want to do a sort of a quick update from the last podcast I did. Elon's totally lost his shit. The signs were clear. As I even pointed out on Wednesday, it was pretty clear that Elon was starting to look for a way out for MAGA and attack Trump over nonsense. And it was so funny. I was on Twitter when it happened, and I saw Elon posted something, and it was him saying that Trump was on the Epstein list. And it's such a bullshit thing for Elon to do. First off, of course, Trump may be on some sort of records regarding Epstein. He did fly with Epstein, Trump. And Epstein also visited and was, I think, a member of Mar-a-Lago for a period of time. But Trump later kicked Epstein out after there were complaints against him. And Michael Cohen, to his credit, I guess, has made it clear that Michael Cohen, who's Trump's former lawyer before he turned on him, has made it clear that Trump had no relationship with Epstein. In fact, he did an interview about it. I'm going to play the clip right now.
Is there a world in which these two transactional guys, Musk and Trump, figure out that it's better not to be fighting and come back together? Or you think this?
No, I think once Elon went so low in terms of talking about Epstein, and if we can stay on that topic for a quick second, look, I have extensive knowledge of Trump, being by his side for almost a decade and a half.
Right.
Let me dispel all of that notion. While he knew Jeffrey Epstein, and while, yes, he may be in the files in the form of Trump being in the black book, so are hundreds and hundreds of very name-worthy, influential individuals. I have zero knowledge of any relationship between Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, and I would have seen it over the course of
literally, because your prosecution was all about how much you knew, and in your testimony,
and I'm telling you, it's nonsense. It's to the best of my knowledge and everything that I know, it's not true. In fact, there was one case that came up. It was a Jane Doe versus Donald Trump that brought this topic into question. And what ultimately I discovered is the Jane Doe, and there was an address in the Bronx. I sent an investigator to that address. I wanted to literally follow and find out who this Jane Doe was. There's not even a building there. It was a vacant lot. And so I reached out to the lawyers. That was the first and only case that I had any knowledge of all of these allegations. So that doesn't mean that the big, beautiful bill, which I call the big, beautiful disaster, is not legitimate.
Okay, blah, blah, blah. He goes on to criticize the bill. But the point is, again, Michael Cohen, who has no reason to defend Trump. I mean, he turned on Trump during the whole Mueller fiasco. And, they basically got Cohen to flip, even though Cohen didn't really have anything real on Trump. I mean, eventually it led to the Alvin Bragg ridiculous New York prosecution. But as Cohen says, there's no there. Trump never, our president and that good at Epstein. There's no record from him ever going to Epstein Island, by the way. That's the thing all these lefties, like these idiots like Kyle Kalinske, always leave out when they say, Trump's in the Epstein files. Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. It's like, Trump never went to the pedo island. Trump kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of out of Mar-a-Lago. One of Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers has publicly came out and said that he tried to find out if Epstein had any knowledge on Trump, and Epstein made it clear in their private, deliberations that he had nothing on Trump. And now Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, who was around Trump for a long time, as he said, and has no reason to defend Trump, makes it clear that this whole thing is bogus. So the fact that Elon Musk would go out on Twitter to imply that Donald Trump, our president, is a pedophile is disgusting. And he's definitely on drugs. There's no question about it. And I think even today, Trump was quoted, I think, from the Washington Post during an interview or something, of saying that Elon Musk was a major druggie, a major, drug problem. Who could imagine that? The autistic billionaire has a drug problem. Who could have seen that coming, right? There's a drug problem. And I think it was reported today in the New York Times that Scott Besson and Elon Musk got into a physical fight, not too long ago. Maybe that explains Elon Musk's black eye that he had in the Oval Office during his send-off. I don't know. It definitely was not his kid who punched him. That is not how Elon got that black eye. That's such a bullshit excuse. You could smell that bullshit from a mile away. So the whole thing's kind of a disaster. For Elon, Trump's fine. And, I think Trump's been relatively measured. Again, there's some quotes coming out today where he's definitely sort of upticking his critiques of Musk. But think of it. Musk calls Trump a pedophile and then calls for his impeachment. He calls for J.D. Vance to replace him. I mean, what the fuck? Like, what is he doing? I mean, he's just burning all these bridges. What probably happened was he got high. He took too many uppers. Then he went berserk on Twitter with autism, with the autism and the drugs. He couldn't help himself. And then he got back down to reality and then he started deleting some of the tweets. I believe he deleted the tweet or the X post that, him accusing Trump of being, in the Epstein files, basically. He deleted that post. So it's a shame what Elon's doing. Hopefully it comes to his senses. But, again, he's always been a liberal. Probably not the best guy. It is what it is. It's kind of sad to see, and maybe they'll make up. Trump does have a history of making up with people after they're critical of him. But I don't think Trump's had a lot of former allies or friends accuse him of being a pedophile and then them coming back into his good graces. I think that would be a first. So we'll see. But anyway, the one thing I will say about this whole Elon debacle is it has exposed a little bit of a rift in the right between the libertarian right and the populist right, or like the more, maybe establishment right versus the populist right. I mean, you had Ben Shapiro more so taking Elon's side than Trump's side. In fact, he was sort of maybe not agreeing, but not disagreeing with Elon's assessment that he's the reason why Trump won and why Trump became socially acceptable. And Shapiro was on with Megyn Kelly, and Megyn Kelly, to her credit, totally shot Ben down and made it clear, what made Trump more socially acceptable was his response to being shot at Butler, and he raised his fist in the air with blood on his face from his ear, saying to fight. That's what got all these, these tech bros like the Facebook guy, Mark Zuckerberg, and all these other tech bros, Jeff Bezos, all these guys. That's what got them to be on Trump's side, was seeing Trump's reaction to being under fire. So it's always interesting with Shapiro. He always is he's a neocon at heart. He supported Trump, but remember, he supported DeSantis until Iowa. It wasn't until after DeSantis got destroyed in Iowa is when Shapiro, went to endorse Trump and support Trump. He raised money for Trump, to be fair and to his credit, and that's good. I wanted people to give money to Trump for the most part. I mean, I don't like our system of billionaires and millionaires giving all this money to politicians, but if that's the system, I want to win. That's the game. We should play the game well, right? So I give Shapiro credit for that, I guess, but he's a neocon. He really dislikes J.D. Vance. You can tell he does not like J.D. Vance. And that's the real fight that's ahead of us, is between the populists and the neocon establishment. And that's going to be what the 2028 primary is. But I'll get into that in a later podcast. Anyway, so like I said, the rest of the podcast is going to be from this past week. I hope you enjoy it. And yeah, talk to you guys later. Welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. Sorry for the week break. I needed a little bit of a vacation. Just needed a break. But we're back, baby. A new announcement for the format of the podcast. We're going to be going 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. The episodes will be maybe a little bit shorter, probably 10 to 20 minutes. And on Fridays, I'll combine the episodes throughout the week and just post one big podcast with all the segments. So, yeah, Monday through Thursday, plus a Friday drop that combines the 4 episodes of the week. So, good to be back, and let's get into the show. So, I wanted to talk about Nick Fuentes versus Tim Pool. It's been a feud that the internet has been talking about nonstop in right-wing circles. And I wanted to talk about because it sort of brings us to sort of a divide we have on the right between, maybe the libertarian right versus sort of the contrarian, reactionary, some would say populist, but I wouldn't say populist, right? Between Poole and Fuentes. For those who don't know, I think most people know who Tim Pool is. I think Nick Fuentes is maybe a little bit more of, he's more online than Tim Pool in a sense, if you could be more online than Tim Pool. Fuentes is a little bit more fringe, but Nick Fuentes, he's sort of a white nationalist slash, reactionary, as I said. He calls himself a racialist. He famously was at the Capitol on January 6th. He got banned from multiple streaming platforms. He is very critical of Israel, very critical of Jews. Let's be honest here. He doesn't like the Jews. And, he's very far right in a sense. He was a big Trump supporter back in 2016 and 2020. I mean, he went to the Capitol, like I said, on January 6th. Big Trump supporter. But in 2024, he actually didn't support Trump because Trump wasn't right-wing enough, if you can believe it. So that's the type of guy Nick Fuentes is. Like I said, I think most people know Tim Pool, but Tim Pool is one of those sort of classical liberals that kind of went to the right because the left got so extreme. He's one of those types. And, like I said with Fuentes, he's the type of person that's obsessed with Israel. All he can talk about is Israel and how terrible Israel is. And, that's fine. You can be critical of Israel. The problem with Fuentes is that, number one, he's way too obsessed with Israel. He blames all the U.S. problems on Israel practically. And he also, let's be honest, he doesn't like Israel because it's full of Jews. He doesn't like the Jews. And, that's you can think what you want, but you shouldn't be against Israel because it's full of Jewish people. That's sort of retarded. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being Jewish, obviously, so that's the deal. So Tim Pool has been calling Nick Fuentes Israel first because all he wants to talk about is Israel. And Nick Fuentes responded to Tim Pool recently, and I wanted to play the clip and discuss it.
Tim Pool loves to do this tough guy routine. You can't do that with me because you're afraid of having me on the show. You can raise your voice. You can get your beanie all up in a bunch and all that on Timcast with your sycophants, with your numbskull idiot sycophants that you have on your show. You can't play that game with me. You're afraid to have me on the show. I want Nick Fuentes to hear this. Yeah, as long as I'm not in the room. As long as I'm not in the room to address it. Big tough guy, big intelligent genius. I know the argument that's going to destroy Nick Fuentes just as long as he isn't in the room to respond. Just as long as he's thousands of miles away. I'm easy to find. You know how to reach me. If you want to humiliate me and defeat me in debate, hey, asshole, bring me on the show. Say it to my face. Come on my show. You're afraid of your precious YouTube channel. You're afraid of losing your mainstream platform access, which I lost years ago. Come on my show. Do it on Alex Jones. Do it on Zero Hedge. Do it on Elijah Schaefer. I mean, literally, name the time, name the place. You want me to hear it? Say it to my face, bitch. Say it to my face. Don't get all pressed on your show with all your sycophantic losers that you pay to sit there and agree with you and you talk over them. I mean, those people be impressed by anything. And this is the game that he's been doing this for years now. I want Nick Fuentes to hear this. Nick Fuentes isn't ready for this argument. Will you have him on the show? Will you debate him one-on-one, have a discussion? Your morning show, your evening show, this show, on this other show. No, I can't do that because he's going to get my YouTube banned. No, I can't do that because he offended me when him and Ye got up and left. No.
Yeah, but Nick, okay, I'm gonna stop playing the clip. Yeah, but Nick, that's the point. Tim Pool actually did have you on the show with Ye at the time, and then you both dipped. You left within 5 to 10 minutes. Kanye just got up and left. You could have stayed. I mean, Tim Pool didn't kick you out after that, Fuentes. You could have stayed on the show. And this is the point about Fuentes. He's a bad faith actor. First off, he's just a weird guy. I mean, he's the type of person. He'll say ridiculous things like, it's gay to have sex with women. I mean, he has said that, Nick Fuentes, unironically. Famously, he's a virgin. He hasn't had sex. He's not going to have sex till he's like 50. He's probably a closeted homosexual, Nick Fuentes, which is okay. It's Pride Month. We love the homosexuals. But that's the type of guy that Nick Fuentes is. And by the way, he's homophobic himself. Yeah, when Kanye, admits that he, had a weird relationships with his cousins when he was kids, Fuentes defended it. And look, I can understand defending perhaps a trauma thing regarding childhood, but considering Fuentes' past critiquing homosexuality, the fact that Kanye would admit something like what he did, if you don't know the details, I'm not going to explain it, but you can look it up about Kanye and his cousin. Fuentes defended it. It's like, you're not consistent. You're just a weird guy. You're not consistent. You're obsessed with Israel. And, Tim Pool accurately states that you're obsessed with Israel, and then you take great offense. And then you say, well, you won't have me on your show. He did have you on your show. Tim Pool did have you on his show, and then you left with Kanye because Kanye couldn't handle like a very basic, very reasonable question about why the fuck are you going on saying how much you love Hitler? Like, how is Tim Pool the problem here? You're the problem here. You're a weird guy. I understand. I have some sympathy for Nick Fuentes because he was banned off of everything. But he's not. It's not like he was banned for just being a mainstream conservative. He was banned for saying very, very, very edgy far right things. Again, he's called himself a racialist, meaning he talks about the differences between races and all that crap. He talks nonstop about how he thinks Israel and Jews essentially run the world and the United States. He's called Trump a cuck for Israel. I mean, Fuentes is a guy that refused to support Trump in 2024, yet when Trump won, he took credit for it on Twitter. He said something of the effect that, oh, we did it, we won again. It's like, what do you mean we did it, Fuentes? You weren't supporting Trump in 2024. Why are you trying to take credit now? I mean, he is a bad faith actor. I mean, that's just the reality. And again, Tim Pool is not perfect. Okay. He's frankly not the smartest guy. I'll give you this. Fuentes is more intelligent than Tim Pool. I mean, that's obvious. Again, I don't like Fuentes. I think Tim Pool is much better. But Fuentes does have a higher IQ. I mean, there's no question. I mean, Tim Pool struggles to defend his own position when he goes on liberal shows like, the Majority Report or, when he debates liberals like David Pakman, Sam Cedar, etc. So I'm not a huge Tim Pool fan by any means. I don't even listen to his podcast very much. I think it's often very boring. But he's totally on the right side of this versus Fuentes. Again, he did have you on your show, Fuentes, and you just got up and left with your boyfriend Kanye. And by the way, another thing is Nick Fuentes, he was like going around saying, trying to help Kanye run for president. Kanye, this individual who's clearly suffering from, mental issues, Kanye. I don't think that's a controversial statement. Okay. I mean, the reality is Fuentes is not a serious person. He's not a serious political player. Okay. And again, I'm not for censorship, but, there has to be a line somewhere. And again, I don't support censorship. I don't think Fuentes should have been banned off all these platforms. He is on Rumble now. You can watch his content on Rumble. I don't really suggest it, but you can do it. Again, proving that Rumble really is a free speech haven. By the way, I like Rumble, but they really have to fix the ads. The ads are crazy. Even if you make an account, the ads are just absurd, but that's a separate story. But I will probably try to get this podcast on Rumble soon in the future, but it's a little tricky. But the point, Fuentes is not a serious person. And you can think what you want about Tim Pool. He has a huge platform. He's mainstream. He did much more to help the conservative movement over the last 8 years than Fuentes has. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, big reason why Trump made gains is because he did better with younger minority voters. That's the type of demographic that Tim Pool appeals to. I'm sorry, it's not the type of demographic that Fuentes does. All the Fuentes talks about is why he hates Jews and why white people are being replaced, and we need to support white people. And obviously, I'm not against supporting white people, but that doesn't appeal to minorities. I mean, come on. So yeah, Tim Pool's in the right here. He's right to call Fuentes and the Groypers Israel first, because that's this idea that Israel runs the United States is not true. Should we cut ties with Israel and support them less? Yes, but that doesn't mean they run the country. They don't run the United States. So Tim Pool's in the right. Fuentes is a retard, and I just thought it was good to talk about this because I'm seeing people go after Tim Pool. Tim Pool's not the problem here. Fuentes is the problem here. He's a fraud. Again, he was willing to. He admits he didn't vote for Trump this past election. He was willing to give us Kamala Harris. I mean, this guy is he's a little bit insufferable if you want to know the truth. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. So I will be back tomorrow with a new podcast. Thank you for listening. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Check out the website, rightwingpopulist.com. More content coming throughout the week. I apologize for the week's absence, but, we needed a little bit of a vacation. So anyway, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hello, welcome to another edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So on today's show, I want to sort of address a lot of the criticism I've gotten for yesterday's episode regarding Nick Fuentes and his feud with Tim Pool. A lot of the Fuentes fans did not seem to like the video. They made their displeasure very clear in the comments section on the YouTube version. You can say a lot about Nick Fuentes, but one thing you have to give to him is his fans are super loyal. There's no question about it. They're very loyal. Probably they're loyal in the same way a girlfriend's loyal to the boyfriend that beats them up, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure what you're getting out of it, but they're definitely loyal. There's no question about it. But I think, they actually, some of his fans in the comments did make some good points. I didn't thoroughly address all the issues that have sort of come up with this feud, and I wanted to make sure I did that. But before we do, I just want to remind you guys to subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, essentially wherever you can get your podcasts. Subscribe to my website, rightwingpopulist.com. If you want to support the podcast financially, there's a paid option on the website to subscribe. I really appreciate the support. So, like I said, a lot of the Fuentes fans are not happy with the episode from yesterday. And I wanted to address some of the criticisms. Number one, a very prevalent criticism I saw of the video was this idea that Tim Pool isn't actually right-wing. Tim Pool is right-wing. He may not be as right-wing as Fuentes, but Tim Pool is definitely right-wing. I mean, he's been coddling Trump's balls for over 6-7 years now. Okay, every video he's done is from a right-wing perspective, essentially. He's either talking about crime or how bad, woke is and everything, how bad DEI is. He is clearly on the right, Tim Pool. He's not he may say he's a liberal. That's okay. I mean, that's like, a guy who hasn't had a girlfriend his whole life saying he's really straight still. I mean, it's not, at a certain point, it's just not believable. And Tim Pool, saying he's a liberal and not a right-winger, it's just not believable at this point. And I mean, again, that was a very common thing I saw in the comments. Tim Pool, he's not a right-winger. Yes, Tim Pool is a right-winger. He's right-wing. He may not say it himself, but he's clearly right-wing. There's no question about it. And again, you can't coddle Trump's balls for the last 6 years the way Tim Pool has and not be right-wing. I'm sorry. Even if your actual views on certain policies aren't right-wing, the effect of Tim Pool's show, and I don't mind this because I wanted Trump to win, but the effect of Tim Pool's show was to boost the right, to boost Trump, to help him win this past election. And I'm happy about it. I wanted Trump to win, unlike Nick Fuentes, by the way. Again, this guy who claims he's America first didn't even vote for Trump or didn't even directly support Trump in this past election. was okay, essentially, with Kamala becoming president, and this guy's America first. I mean, give me a break. But Tim Pool is definitely right wing. There's no question about it. And there was another thing I saw in the comments, this idea that I wasn't like addressing Tim Pool. Excuse me, I wasn't addressing Nick Fuentes' points directly. I think I did to some degree, but I'll go even further. I mean, Nick Fuentes is somewhat of a hypocrite. He gets very mad, and sometimes justifiably so, when people mischaracterize him and his views and his actions. Fair point, and people have done that to Fuentes, and that's not cool. Just because you don't like someone's politics doesn't mean you should misrepresent what they've said or done. But he did that with Tim Pool. I mean, I'll play the more audio of what he said, but he said things about Tim Pool that are clearly not true.
No, I can't do that because he's going to get my YouTube banned. No, I can't do that because he offended me when him and Ye got up and left. No, I can't do that because, his audience keeps asking for him and you're not supposed to do that. So, Tim, go fuck yourself. You were in a meeting with Netanyahu and nobody would even know that unless somebody leaked it. You got mad that you got exposed and found out. You met with the prime minister of Israel. You've lost your ability to say that you're impartial. I only care about America. Is that why you were meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and telling him about how anti-Semitism is created by Qatar? I mean, give me a break. You allowed Daily Wire to use your facility or vice versa for your election night coverage in 2024 after you denied that you were going to get bought out by them. You took Russian money. So shut the fuck up. You are not impartial. You don't care about America.
Okay, so putting aside the fact that, the insults, I mean, first off, number one, just because you take a meeting with Netanyahu does not mean you don't support America. I mean, I agree with the criticism that a lot of people on the right have been making lately, that people like Ben Shapiro, a lot of people at the Daily Wire, are way too pro-Israel and sometimes at the expense of what's probably in the interest of America. That critique is true. But just because Tim Pool met with Netanyahu, among with other journalists and content creators, doesn't mean Tim Pool doesn't love America or isn't looking at what's best for America. A lot of people would meet with Netanyahu. I'm sure Fuentes probably would, if he, maybe not because of concern of his own safety, but why would you not want to meet with one of the most powerful, especially if you think Netanyahu is actually the real person running the United States, why would you not meet with him? I mean, that's sort of contradictory if you think about it. This guy is super powerful. He's really the guy who's running our country, but I'm not going to meet with him. I mean, what the fuck? That almost seems contradictory. It's probably not actually contradictory in a real sense, but it's sort of practically a contradiction if you think about it. And then he essentially he says that, oh, Tim Pool took Russian money. He took Russian money, essentially implying that he's not a real American and he doesn't care about America's interests. It's like, dude, even the Biden DOJ, when they indicted Tenet Media for taking foreign money, Russian money, they made it very clear that the content creators that were a part of this media deal, that they were victims, including Tim Pool. They weren't a part of this whole deal. And why would you even trust what the Biden DOJ had to say about Russia? It was basically Russiagate 2.0. And you're just like taking the bait on that, Nick? Oh, he took Russian money. He took Russian money. It's like, dude, you sound like Rachel Maddow. Oh my God, Tim Pool took money, and then some of it may have come from the Russians. It's like, who cares? Who cares? There's no evidence, again, as what the indictment of the Tenet Media people said, there's no evidence that Tim Pool had to change his content views. Contrary to what you hear from left-wing people and people like Fuentes on the internet, there's no evidence Tim Pool changed any of his views because he was taking money from Tenet. It was a media deal. Okay, it's very common. I'm sure Fuentes has done it. At least he's tried to do it in the past when he was trying to get a job with the Daily Wire. I mean, this is pretty common stuff. So the fact that he'd be like, oh, he took Russian money. It's like, dude, go work for MSNBC then if you're going to start using those bullshit attacks. I mean, come on. Again, he's so sensitive and rightfully so in some aspects. I get it. He's so sensitive when people, attributed him bad motive or conspiracy theories like the idea he's a Fed. I mean, Nick Fuentes is clearly not a Fed. Totally will give that to him. And people who accuse him of being a Fed are clearly naive. He sacrificed a lot for his worldview, whether you agree with it or not. And you have to respect that. But he then does what he doesn't, he does what he accuses other people of doing, of giving him other people false motives. I mean, that's the problem with Fuentes and why, and in some ways, he's not really America first in a lot of ways. But I mean, he's just a conspiracy. This idea that he's a conspiracy theorist. I mean, this idea that Israel runs the United States is not true. It's just not. And this sort of brings us to a larger topic about Fuentes and whether or not he really is America first. First off, from a strictly, political point of view, Nick Fuentes' movement, again, whether you agree with it or not, is not politically viable. Okay, it's just not. He holds views that the majority of Americans don't believe in. So it's very hard to be America first if you can't even get elected. How are you going to implement these policies if you're not going to get elected? Whether you like it or not, America is becoming more diverse. And you have to win these people over to win the election. Trump would have not won this past election without getting over 40% of the Hispanic vote, slightly improving in some rural black counties in places like Georgia and North Carolina. You need to appeal to minority voters to win elections going forward. He certainly would not have won the popular vote without doing well with some of these minority voters, particularly young minority voters. And I'm sorry, Fuentes is, he's called himself a racialist, and this idea that race is real. Again, if you believe that, fine, but that's a turnoff for a lot of, younger minority voters. And you're just not going to get elected that way. Tim Pool, whether you like it or not, he appeals to a larger demographic. Again, a demographic that just got Trump elected. And again, this sort of is, again, it also shows Fuentes' hypocrisy. He took credit for Trump winning this past election when he made it very clear on his show and on Twitter or wherever that he wasn't supporting the guy. And then he takes credit. Like, I can't believe we did it again. What do you mean we? You were shitting on Trump. You were wrong. You said that if he continued listening to Chris LaCivita, he was going to lose the election. He won easily. You were wrong, buddy. You were wrong. And he never really owned it. And frankly, Fuentes is a contrarian. And that's okay. I've been a contrarian in my life. I understand that. But he's been clearly contrarian with Trump when Trump has become more mainstream. He won the popular vote. That's how more mainstream he got. You see Fuentes become more anti-Trump. He's a contrarian. Is he really America first, or is he just a contrarian? I mean, you can be both, I suppose. But if your rhetoric and your sort of what you emphasize is just based off what's more, out there, what's more contrarian, are you really America first, or do you just want to be an edgelord? I don't know. Not clear with Fuentes, unfortunately. So I understand some of the criticism, the Fuentes fans have, and I get why they're sensitive. I get it. I get why y'all can be sensitive. I mean, I do. He was unfairly, from a free speech point of view, banned off of all these major platforms. He had a rough couple of years. I totally get it. I'm not trying to hate on Fuentes. And by the way, there are comments saying you wouldn't debate Nick. I saw a few of them. Obviously, I would debate Nick. I mean, he's not going to do it. I'm a new podcaster. I have a very new website. I don't have, much of a following base so far. But obviously, if he ever invited me, I would totally debate him on anything he wanted to. You could reach out to me on X, or my website has the Gmail you can reach out to me on. So, of course, I would talk and debate Nick. But, I don't think he will because I'm new to the game. But just putting that out there. So anyway, it's just not. If you actually look at the actual details of the feud between Poole and Fuentes, Poole's clearly more on the right. He's just obviously correct that Fuentes is way too obsessed with Israel. He's just factually wrong. This idea that Israel runs the United States. There are other foreign lobbies that are similar to Israeli size that have major influence in the United States, like Saudi Arabia. And while Saudi Arabia and Israel, they're not on bad terms per se. They're officially not on good terms. I understand that there's some, in reality, Saudi Arabia and Israel get along better than, other Middle Eastern countries, there's no question. But it's not like they're best friends still. So, and Saudi Arabia has huge influence in the United States. Other countries do. Qatar, I mean, they just gave Trump a fucking plane. I mean, it's not just Israel. And by the way, I agree with the Groypers in the sense that obviously we should give Israel less money. We should stop giving them any money. And the way they've handled the war with what's going on in the Middle East with Hamas and everything, it's terrible with Gaza. I'm totally with the Groypers on that, but I don't have that view because I don't like Jewish people. And I'm sorry, if you don't think that Fuentes' view on the whole Gaza war isn't influenced by his conspiracy theory of Jews running the world, then you're very naive. You're very naive. That's not to say, yes, Israel has a lot of power that I wish they didn't. But they don't run the United States. Trump is running the United States right now. And Israel's not like dictating every little thing Trump does. That's not the case. So, anyway, again, Tim Pool in this feud is right. He is too obsessed with Israel. Fuentes smeared Pool, just making accusations that makes him sound like he belongs on MSNBC. Rachel Maddow. He kind of looks like Rachel Maddow now. Nick Fuentes, if you want to know the truth, but that's a story for another day. I mean, they both never, I'm just going to leave it at that. But, and again, is it really America first? If all you do is talk about Israel and you support policies that can't get a majority support, so how are you even going to, get elected? And your policies are implemented on, somehow getting rid of the Jewish influence and becoming a Christian nationalist country. Are you really America first, or are you just Nick Fuentes first and enjoys being a contrarian? Which is why you've been anti-Trump, because Trump has become mainstream. I don't know, just food for thought. Anyway, that's today's podcast. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. Again, I'm available anywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can get it. Or if you want, you can subscribe on YouTube. I really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow. You guys have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So on today's show, I want to talk about Elon Musk and somewhat publicly breaking from Trump. It's probably the first real break we've seen between the two. And it's probably no coincidence. This comes off the back of him leaving his post at Doge. I want to talk about that. So please subscribe to the podcast. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, essentially wherever you can get your podcasts. Another thing I want to mention quickly, the last two episodes have done really well on YouTube. Shout out to all the Nick Fuentes fans for checking out the videos. I appreciate it. I appreciate the feedback. You've made your opinions very well known. Like I said in the previous podcast, you got to give it to Nick. He has a very dedicated fan base. So I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you watching and listening to the content. But I just wanted to give a shout out to the Groypers. They're very committed people. You got to give them credit. Very committed. So I appreciate you guys engaging with the content. I appreciate it. But let's talk about Elon. So yesterday, Elon, I'm going to read it, had this to say about the GOP spending bill that Trump is very publicly backing, very strongly backing the bill. This is what Elon had to say. I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. A little dramatic, although, I'm probably reading it with a little bit more dramatic flair than he perhaps intended. But it's very interesting to see Elon, go out publicly against a bill like this because of the fact that Trump has pushed it so strongly. And, you do have to wonder, is Elon sort of looking for a way to, pull the rug out from MAGA, essentially, looking for a permission, structure to no longer be associated with MAGA. If you look at, Tesla's sales and stock and everything, Elon did not personally financially benefit by publicly backing Trump and working for Trump. He just hasn't. So is it possible, now that he no longer is a part of Doge, his temporary government contract expired, is it possible he's looking for a way to sort of get back into the good graces of the liberal establishment? It's possible. It is possible. I mean, remember, Elon's a liberal. I mean, let's all remember this. I mean, he used to be loved by the left because he created Tesla and all these electric cars, and the left loved electric cars because they hate gasoline, because they're environmental freaks and believe all these dumb things about global warming. So the left used to love Elon just because of that. And Elon, he supported Obama in the past. He supported many. I mean, he's open about this. He supported many Democrats. So he's a liberal. He's not a conservative. And even when and people also forget about this, in 2023, when the Republican primaries were heating up, he made it very clear he preferred DeSantis over Trump. Remember that. He supported DeSantis over Trump, or at least he strongly suggested he supported DeSantis over Trump. People forget about this because, it wasn't essentially a real primary because Trump was so dominant. But that's what Elon Musk was saying. And frankly, if you think about it, the only reason Elon sort of went publicly so hard against the Biden administration was because the Biden DOJ, I believe, was suing Elon Musk for not hiring enough foreign workers. And according to, Elon described it when he went on Joe Rogan's podcast right before the election, because Elon has all these contracts with the U.S. government. Essentially, there are laws that were preventing him from hiring foreign workers because of U.S. security concerns. But there were also laws that you had to be like minimums for foreign people or diversity. And the Biden DOJ was suing him for violating those quotas, even though by law he couldn't hire foreign people because of the fact he was dealing with national security issues. This shows you how fucked up the Biden DOJ was. But if you think about it, that's probably not hard to see why. It's the main reason why Elon, turned to the right. It's because the Biden DOJ it was lawfare. They were suing him over bullshit. And that's why he turned to the right. He needed support from the right because of these ridiculous lawsuits coming from the political weaponization Biden DOJ. And also, he didn't endorse Trump until once we got relatively close to the 2024 election. I mean, he endorsed Trump when Trump got shot. He immediately did it. I mean, I saw it. I saw Trump got shot live. I was on Twitter immediately, or X, and I saw Elon. He immediately endorsed Trump, and I thought that was awesome. I thought it was cool. Not because I agree with Elon's politics. I generally don't. Again, he's a liberal. I did it because I thought it would benefit Trump, and having the financial backing was beneficial to Trump because the Democratic Party has become the party of the billionaires. I mean, as you know, in all three of the Trump elections, Wall Street actually gave more money to the Democrat than Trump, the Republican. It was like basically the first time ever. And people talk about how, Trump has all these billionaire donors, Elon Musk. It's like Harris had more billionaire donors than Trump. Trump just had a very, public one in Elon, but Harris still had more. She had more money from Wall Street. She got more money from Wall Street. Remember that. But that's why, but that's essentially why Trump endorsed, excuse me, that's essentially why Elon endorsed Trump, it seems to me, is because of the fact that the Biden DOJ was, going after Elon with lawfare. And I think Elon viewed supporting Trump as a way to get political support. And because if you look at what Elon has supported, he's not against illegal immigration for the most part. I think he's even admitted him and other big companies can benefit from illegal immigration. To the extent he supports deportations, it's only for criminals, which, you can defend. But he's not a right-wing nut or conservative. He's a liberal. Okay. And if you look at the issues with the spending bill, it seems to me what he's upset about that, they're not cutting a bunch of spending, which I can understand. Him and Doge spent a lot of time, trying to find what, areas in the areas in the federal government that could be cut. And I understand that. But the reality is Congress is always scared to cut spending. A lot of the spending's grandfathered in. It's very difficult. And, this may be a hot take or controversial, but I always sort of viewed Doge as sort of silly in a sense. This idea you're going to have this autistic billionaire and a bunch of young guys in their 20s going into the federal government and fundamentally changing things. I always thought it was kind of quirky and strange. Not necessarily against it in principle, but I always just thought it was a little weird. It's like, why the fuck? I mean, and also, they got some stuff wrong. I mean, they would say things about some of these Doge cuts, like saying, oh, we're spending all this money, studying transgender mice. That wasn't true. That really wasn't true at all. I mean, so they got some stuff wrong and publicly wrong, and it sort of embarrassed Trump by, telling Trump these things, and then Trump would say it out loud, and then he'd be fact-checked by the libtards in the media, and the libtards would be right, actually, sometimes, because Elon and Doge was giving Trump bad information. But they also found some real stuff. I mean, what they exposed with USAID was awesome. I mean, clearly USAID has essentially been like where the deep state's been funneling money to all these foreign countries. I love that Doge exposed that. Don't get me wrong at all. They did some good work. But Elon shouldn't take it personally that Congress doesn't want to codify all these Doge cuts, because the reality is, even with Republicans, everyone's scared to cut spending. It's very difficult to do so, even with Republicans. So some of these cuts that Doge recognized, especially having to do with USAID, definitely should be codified by Congress, because of the fact that when Trump has tried to stop some of the spending, the libtards in the legal system and the courts, these resistant judges, have been trying to prevent the Trump administration from cutting some of the spending themselves. And there's a constitutional argument for it. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to totally dismiss these judges for just being political. There are legal issues for sure. So it would be good that some of these cuts get codified by Congress, but the reality is Elon's not upset because of the issues having to do with like no tax on tips, some of the issues with the border and the bill. That's not what he cares about. He's just upset that some of the spending stuff isn't getting cut. And, that's okay, but it's again, he's a liberal. And again, I say this to say, I bring this up just because I've always thought that Elon would perhaps try to look for an out with MAGA, to try to turn against MAGA to get the media back on his side, because the media has gone so hard against him ever since he's publicly been a Trump supporter. And when, run a company like Tesla, if you just look at the politics of it, it makes more sense to be aligned with the left than to be aligned with the right. If you have an electric car company. I mean, that's the reality. Okay? That's the reality. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. So I don't know. I think it's very possible Elon will become more critical of Trump and the administration going forward, especially now that he's no longer part of the administration. I don't think that's a coincidence. So it's just something to keep an eye on. Again, I don't dislike Elon Musk, but the reality is he is a liberal. The only reason I believe he supported Trump was because of necessity. Trump wasn't even the first Republican Elon supported, really. It was really Ron DeSantis. People forget. But you can look it up. He said it. He wanted a normal Republican. So, anyway, it's something to keep an eye on for sure, to see what Elon has up his sleeve going forward. Anyway, that's today's episode. Thank you for listening. Again, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you can get it. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Subscribe to the website, rightwingpopulist.com. I appreciate it. The podcast and the website have done really well recently. I love the support. You guys have a good rest of your day now. Bye-bye. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the newest edition of the Right Wing Populist podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So it's official, folks. The Elon Trump breakup, it's happening. The libs were right. You got to give this to the libs. The libs had been saying for months now that inevitably Trump and Elon were going to have a breakup, and they were right. The breakup's happening. Kind of makes me sad because both Trump and Elon are freaking awesome dudes. It was so sick seeing them come together to defeat the commies and the deep state in this past election. So to see Trump and Elon essentially attacking each other indirectly, and now, as I'll play in a couple of minutes, directly. It's sad to see. You could tell they were such good friends. Elon, the weird autistic son, and Trump, the understanding dad. It was a nice little relationship, but now it's not looking so good. And you know why Elon decided to become critical of Trump. It's becoming more clear. There were essentially a bunch of tax credits for EV vehicles or whatever that this new spending bill gets rid of. That's what Axios reported. And that seems to be the big reason why Elon is turned on Trump. Probably that, and the fact that, not all the Doge cuts are being codified by Congress, and that Elon probably doesn't like that. And as I suggested yesterday, I think Elon probably is looking for a way to get back into the good graces of the liberal establishment. And no better way to do that than by attacking Trump. So I think Elon's just looking for a pretext, but I think he's also probably mad about, the new EV mandates that they're getting rid of the tax credits or whatever. So, and Trump was asked about Elon, I think for the first time directly, about Elon criticizing the new spending bill, and I'm going to play you what Trump had to say right now.
Well, look, I've always liked Elon, and it's always very surprised. You saw the words he had for me, and he hasn't said anything about me that's bad. I'd rather have him criticize me than the bill, because the bill is incredible. It's the biggest cut in the history of our country. We've never cut. It's about 1.6 trillion in cuts. It's the biggest tax cut. You would say people's taxes will go way down, but it's the biggest tax cut in history. We are doing things in that bill that are unbelievable. And when you look at what we're doing for small businesses, for people, for middle income people, all of the things that we're doing, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And, Elon's upset because we took the EV mandate and, which was a lot of money for electric vehicles. And, they're having a hard time with electric vehicles, and they want us to pay billions of dollars in subsidy. And, Elon knew this from the beginning. He knew it for a long time ago. I would say, JD, that hasn't changed. That's been right from the beginning, Mr. Secretary. That hasn't changed at all, right from the beginning. But I know that it disturbed him. He wanted, and rightfully, he recommended somebody that he, I guess, knew very well. I'm sure he respected him, but to run NASA. And I didn't think it was appropriate. And he happened to be a Democrat, like totally Democrat. And I say, look, we won. We get certain privileges, and one of the privileges we have to appoint a Democrat. NASA is very important. We have great people. General Kane is going to be picking somebody we'll be checking him out, seeing, but he wanted that person, a certain person, and we said no. And, I can understand why he's upset. Remember, he was here for a long time. You saw a man who was very happy when he stood behind the Oval desk, and even with the black eye, I said, "Do you want a little makeup? We'll get you a little makeup." But he said, "No, I don't think so," which is interesting and very nice. He wants to be who he is, so you could make that statement too, I guess. Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore. I was surprised because you were here. Everybody in this room practically was here as we had a wonderful send-off. He said wonderful things about me. You couldn't have nicer, said the best thing. He's worn the hat. Trump was right about everything. And I am right about the great, big, beautiful bill. We call it a great, big, beautiful bill because that's what it is. And again, biggest tax cuts in history, biggest economic development move anywhere. We've never done anything like it. Business is spurred. And I don't know if you've seen the numbers, but the numbers came out. Even the CBO, which is run by Democrats, said that we're going to be doing, I'd like you to discuss.
Trump also went on to maybe somewhat imply that Elon has Trump derangement syndrome. I'll play that clip as well.
Happening in this room. And I'll tell you, he's not the first. People leave my administration and they love us. And then at some point they miss it so badly. And some of them embrace it and some of them actually become hostile. I don't know what it is. It's sort of Trump derangement syndrome, I guess they call it. But we have it with others too. They leave and they wake up in the morning and the glamour's gone. The whole world is different. Come hostile. I don't know what it is. Someday you'll write a book about it and you'll.
So, yeah, my main takeaway from all this is that I'm just kind of sad. I liked seeing Trump and Elon be together. Like I said, they're two awesome people. So to see them sort of separate now, it's sort of like a kid seeing his parents get a divorce. It's like, oh man, that sucks. And, although, again, you could have sort of see it coming. They both have big egos. Trump, I honestly look at this as sort of a positive for Trump. The fact that he's willing to go against the wishes of someone who gave him a lot of money. That actually, I think, shows. This may seem a little counterintuitive. I think that actually proves Trump has good character. The fact that he's not doing the bidding of one of his biggest donors from this past election, that shows Trump just can't be, bought and paid for by his biggest donor, Elon Musk, his most public biggest donor. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. So, if we want to be serious for a second, so while it sucks seeing these two cool people parting ways, it's good to know that Trump is willing to cross his donors. And he did have some, unfortunately. I wish Trump didn't take as much big money as he did this past election. He raised a lot of money. And you can understand why, a lot of big tech, they were sick of the Biden administration for understandable reasons, if you understand what they were doing to big tech. But I wish that, Zuckerberg and all these retards weren't going on the Trump train and they were all at the inauguration. It was kind of weird. And I didn't think it was a good sign. But the fact that Trump is willing to go against the wishes of, as he said, not appointing one of Elon's people who was a libtard. Good on Trump. We don't need any more Democrats as a part of the Trump administration. We had that problem during Trump's first term. We don't want to repeat that. And in fact, if we got rid of the EV mandates, whatever you think about that, Trump's always been clear he doesn't support that. So the fact that he's not changing his mind because Elon gave him a bunch of money for this past election, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. So actually, this is kind of a positive development to show that Trump, he's not a corrupt politician, which we frankly already knew, but this is just further confirmation of that. It is funny. I think, and I could be reading too much into this, but when Trump was talking about how people, they'll leave his administration and then they attack him and they get TDS. Maybe it was just me, but I sensed a tinge of sadness from Trump. I think Trump is. He would never admit this publicly, obviously, but I think Trump genuinely gets a bit hurt when, one of his friends or whoever was working in the administration and then they attack him. I think it's happened so much he may be a little bit numb to it now, but you could still tell, I think it bothers him. I mean, that's the dirty little secret about Trump. Trump is not this, big, no feelings macho, I want to fire everyone. Trump wants people to like him. So when people that worked for him attack him, I don't think he likes it at all. Again, I could be reading too much into it, but I sensed a little sadness from Trump. And I legitimately think Trump and Elon got along well. I mean, these very few people would have better understanding of what each other were going through, both being so famous, so much public scrutiny, a lot of money, especially Elon. But Trump, he's done well for sure. Both billionaires. So I'm sure, and the reality is the spending bill is a good bill overall. There are problems with it. But, if the spending bill doesn't get passed, everyone's taxes are going up. I mean, is that a good thing? Why? Because we're not, and the bill's bad because we're not cutting enough spending? I mean, give me a break. That's just Washington. That's how Washington works. Democrats want to be able to increase spending without raising taxes, and Republicans want to be able to cut taxes without also cutting spending. That's the reality. So yeah, Republicans are not cutting spending. And it is possible it'll increase the deficit and the debt if, the revenue doesn't increase with the job creation, which is always sort of the theory behind trickle-down economics, Reaganomics, that you'll actually generate more government revenue because of businesses will expand with lower tax rates, and that'll actually lead to the government taking more revenue. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's the theory. So the tax bill is fine. Or spending bill is fine, reconciliation bill, whatever you want to call it. It's a solid bill. It's not perfect. There are problems. I wish, and maybe they still will, they incorporate more of the Doge cuts. But I think Elon's looking for an out. And he probably is personally mad about the EV mandate and not getting his people in. But I also think Elon's looking for an out to get back to the good graces of the liberal establishment. So, anyway, it's good to see Trump not cucking to his donors. That's probably the best thing to come from this. It's good to see. But, I'm also a little sad because, again, Trump and Elon were such a cool duo. Remember when Elon did his speech at Madison Square Garden? He did like the whole like anime yell. He went, "Rah!" And he, pumped up his fist. It was so freaking cool. So now to see them separate, it's kind of sad. It's sad. But, all good things have to come to an end. And again, shout out to Trump for not cucking to his donors. We appreciate it. Anyway, that's the episode for the day. We're done for the week. I will, tomorrow or the weekend, I'll combine all the episodes for the week for one large podcast if you want to listen to that instead of the individual episodes. Again, please subscribe to the podcast. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you can get your podcasts. Subscribe to the website, therightwingpopulist.com. Articles coming every day. It's amazing. Great content. A lot of good memes. We love the memes. So yeah, please support I'm an independent content creator. I really appreciate the support. Guys, have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.